1978, I managed to get a job with a co-op, and was supposed to start at the Belper store, the Emporium, and the personnel officer at the time was on holiday. So he said, will you start at Summercoats? So I started in the grocery there as the first hand, as they were known. And it was an eye-opener because I'd worked for Gateway, which was a bit more modern. And this is always, you've got to write the price of the potatoes on the bag. And I went, never done that before. It was always printed for us. I once got told off by the police for chasing after thieves right the way through Summercoats down into Golden Valley. Into Pye Bridge. And they couldn't find me, and I didn't know where I was going. Every now and again we had a freezer day, and we had big displays. All the butchers came in, and you could fill your freezer for about 30 quid, and you got more meat, frozen foods, anything you wanted. And there was the car park, you couldn't get on it. They were the days I remember most up here.
Well, when I was about 8, the co-op used to run a competition for arts and crafts, and it was held at Shirley Road, the school there. I went to St John's, and my teacher, the task was to paint a co-op shop, and my teacher took me across the road from St John's School to the co-op then, which is now it's a disability wheelchair shop, and I had to draw the window display in the whole co-op shop and then take it back and paint it, which I did, and then it was entered, and then we went round the school on the day of I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a big exhibition, and I went round the school and I found I'd won first prize, which was 365 ice creams, one for every day of the year. But my mother said, I'm not walking from our house every day of the year to fetch you an ice cream. And she had it made into a cake for my birthday, but I didn't have a party. I just shared it with the people next door, either side, and that was it. But it was a very nice cake. It was pink and white and green. There was a chap called Tommy Sandals, who always wore a big army greatcoat and sandals. Yeah.
What did he do?
Just walked around. I can't remember what he did. I think he was Irish. Somebody said he was Irish, but I never heard him speak. But he used to walk miles. And there used to be a lady with a long dress right down to the floor. She was very small, and she wore a big hat. I used to think she looked like, it's not very nice, but she looked like Dopey out of the Seven Dwarfs because of this long dress. A bit like a mushroom, really, with the hat. I can remember her. And a lady called Bessie, who used to live at the Willows. I think she'd been a lady's maid or something, and she was always writing to the Queen. And she, if you said hello, she would say, I can't stop, Bessie's going to see the Queen today, She's very patriotic, was Bessie. Yeah.
I started in the co-op at Heanor, that was the Langley Mill and Aldica co-op, in 1956 when I was 15. And that was the days where you had to weigh screws and nails and measure chicken wire and felt. Nothing came pre-packed. It was all done by hand. Bone meal, even weighing seeds to put in packets. Doug Grant, the departmental finishing manager at Ripley, he says, we need you at Ripley. Ripley had just been refurbished. So I went there and I was under Eric Moorcroft in the furniture, mainly looking after the carpet side. But one of my jobs was also to wind a big clock up at the top of the Ripley building with a great big handle. And if I'd forgot, I was in for trouble. I always remember one, and it was a story from Ripley. And a lady who was in the office at Ripley, and she was very well brought up, and her family was in business elsewhere. And one day, the rumour was that she was having an affair with one of the warehouse man, which was denied until this particular dinner time. She came back a little late, and as she turned round, she'd got sooty hand marks on the back of her blouse. So that confirmed. And the other is that the store manager at Hina, he didn't really know the difference between co-op goods and his own, and eventually he had to be sent down. Doug Grant came to me with the keys and said, "You're taking over completely of all the departments. Here are the keys." And that was it basically. But the fella always blamed the head office, but I was put in a position. I was even interviewed at home by a detective from Nottingham Co-op, and it was put on the line that either I knew what I knew or my job would go as well as the store manager. So I had to spill the beans. Amen. And I will say that when I went to Langley Mill, the shop there, they had got a run of 142 drawers behind the counter. And in these drawers, there was every nail, screw, lock, latch. And I had to learn what was behind these drawers. And when anybody come in, it was like a drum roll, because I was going in and out of these drawers looking for whatever. It took me a while to get there. But health and safety didn't exist, because at the end of the shop, there was all three pieces, all on stands. But at the back, there was a paraffin dispenser in the shop. And every Saturday night, we had to fill these 5-gallon drums of paraffin to be delivered first thing Monday morning. Well, that would have blown the shop sky high and the co-op all and the lot if it ever had gone up. So there was no health and safety.
So one's from Marlene Bennett, who is the Deputy Mayoress of Alfreton. She's been 10 times the Mayor of Amber Valley, and she's been twice in Alfreton, the Mayor, and now she's Deputy Mayor. She lived at Riddings in a street called Co-op Street, and it was called that because there was a co-op there. And she did all the courting in the co-op shop in the Riddings.
I started in the co-op many, 50-odd years ago, been a member at Riddings Co-op. And if you said to anyone in Riddings, "Where's Alfred Street?" they'd say, "I've no idea." Say, "Where is Co-op Street?" and they'd tell you straight away, because the street I lived on, the co-op was at the top. And that's where we did all our shopping. During the war, we had to queue sometimes as many as 3 to 4 hours to be served, because it was such an excellent shop and good value. In my later years, the co-op doorway was the place where I did all my courting, so I have very, very happy memories of the co-op at Riddings.
You mentioned your courting days.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate a bit on your courting days?
Not really.
Were there any long-term romances from it?
Oh yes. I'm very involved with the armed forces, help raise money for them and that. I went out with a bloke in the RAF, co-op courting, and a bloke in the Navy, co-op courting, a bloke in the Army, co-op courting, who I married.
So there we go.
I remember the co-op
opposite the end of Norman Road, on Hedge Road in Ripley, a general stores. My mother took her guide dog in to the shop, and as well as doing her shopping, the manager weighed her dog on the potato scales, big enough for a dog to sit on, and then she reported it back to the Guide Dog Association. They were very keen that the dog should not get overweight. And when I started work, I used the Co-op Bank in Ripley. It was upstairs over the drapery and haberdashery department, a lovely, lovely banking hall. But I can remember going in lots and lots of Co-op shops for boots and shoes, all sorts of groceries, everything you could think of. Proper fishmongers, proper butchers, wonderful bread, and the little tubes, lamsons, I think they're called, the vacuum ones that your money was put in, went in the chute, shot off somewhere, somebody sorted out your change, sent it back with your little divvy slip. Well, I remember Reg Lewis, who was the manager at the Grocers Co-op on the bottom of Norman Road, because he was very good to my mother. He used to keep an eye on her when she was crossing the road with a guide dog. And that was really, really big premises. It later became a vet's, and it's now some sort of storeroom. And I can just remember going in most of the shops with my mum. Don't remember going anywhere with my dad. But I remember all the Co-op things down Crossley Street, which is now the Co-op car park. I think they might have had the stables down there for the horses for the milk carts, and the washing plant, and the horses were still pulling the carts in the 60s. Shows my age, doesn't it? And I think a lot of people use Co-op funeral services in Ripley.
Little Hovis loaf you could buy for a penny in the main Co-op building, that was the main one, wasn't it, in the Co-op Square, a big grand mahogany staircase up the centre, and the bakery and the cafe upstairs. Used to catch the train at Ripley Station to go to the seaside and all those sorts. And the station at Butley was working then. It was an open, not a private one, it was still an ordinary station. Because that station was brought from Whitwell, where my mother was born and lived. And we've still got connections there. And they brought it stone by stone. And one side of it was stolen. A big lorry came one night and took one half of the station away. So you can imagine that that was quite a major feat for the thieves, if you like. But it's ironic that it comes to Ripley, where we've now lived, and it was from the Whitwell station where my mother was born and bred. So there's a little story to that one. Yeah, it was a busy town, and everybody seemed to know everybody, which was like most villages and towns. But a busy market day, and the siren used to go on the top of the town hall every time the fire engine turned out. There's things like that you remember. Mainly through what my dad had told me, because he knew all these people. Like there's a chap had his, he made and sold sweets, and they had those trays of toffee that you break up with a little toffee hammer, as it was, and things like. And there was a mink farm on Lowes Hill, which caused a lot of problems because of the stench from it in the day, because there wasn't the modern facilities. It caused a lot of rats, apparently.
Do you call it? I think you call it dry goods, flour, sugar, that sort of thing. And there are no tills. The guy used to add it up in his head. How many times he got it wrong, I started to think. But you'd ask for the whatever you wanted. It pound of sugar, not this and that and the other. Not butter. Butter was separate. That was across the road. In the provisions, as I think they called it, the manager there was John Carding, I think was the manager in there. And then they'd, when you got a pile and said that's it, they'd then pick every item up, 1 and 6, 1 and 6, 2 and 3, and they'd add like that. You couldn't hope to keep up with them. And whether they got it all right or not, a matter of every year you had to go through the ritual of going up the steps where the clock is, a very imposing staircase that swept up to an enormous office with books about a foot thick, with everything handwritten. And they'd look your name up and fill it in a book, and that was your dividend, as they called it. I never went in. I never remember going in the restaurant or the cafe, as they called it, which is on the right-hand side of the end. I think that's it there. I never remember going in there, but it was I believe, a typical 1920s sort of black dresses and white aprons and little hats and all this sort of thing. So I remember one particular memory, and that's when a lot of the memories start, is, as the old saying goes, the day war broke out. That was obviously Sunday the 3rd of September, and we're off school, and I think we're probably getting to the end of the summer holidays, so we probably would have been going back to school on the Monday or the Tuesday, and we didn't go. The school had been completely taken over. The school, by the school I'm talking about at the bottom of Shirley Road. It had been turned into a casualty clearing centre. The entrances were sandbagged with a turn to go through to, in case of blast and that sort of thing. All the windows got tape on to stop them shattering, and we didn't go to school for certainly a number of weeks. Things that were around very quickly, for example, why it was done I can't imagine, but they posted the sentry in full battle dress outside the drill hall. The drill hall was down Shirley Road on the right-hand side, complete with the 303 rifle, and he walked up and down as if it was guarding Buckingham Palace. I remember the shell, I was going to say the only attack that Ripley got during the war was blue on blue. It was an anti-aircraft shell that failed to go off in the air. It was mistimed. It landed smack bang in the middle of Heath Road. Right at the junction, right outside the Salvation Army. Took all the windows out in the centre part of Heath Road. And was lucky no one was injured. Nobody was killed, nobody was injured at all. It was very lucky. On a summer morning, you'll be wakened up by the clip-clopping of hooves on Heath Road. And what it was were the stablemen from the Co-op dairy fetching the horses back from being turned out overnight. And down just off Wormell's Lane, there was a farm, we always refer to it as the Co-op farm. And it was, they used to take the horses, they'd ride one, no saddle, just ride the horse. They were quite sizable horses pulling the milk drays. And they'd ride one and have either one or two on a leading rein, and clip-clop off down Wormell's Lane with these horses every night. That went every night. And then they'd fetch him back in the morning, I don't know, 6 o'clock time, something like that. And that was just in the summer. going back to the war, another interesting thing was VE night. That was 15th of August 1945, and I'd actually gone to bed, and I could hear somebody shouting, "Is Eric coming out?" sort of thing. Well, it's midnight. Why should Eric be coming out at midnight? Well, the war's over, and we're all going up to the marketplace, and in the town was stationed a battalion of RASC troops, Royal Army Service Corps, and I think the purpose of it was a training battalion because they seemed to teach them how to drive. They had a huge fleet of army lorries, and anyway, we eventually got out of bed and went up onto the marketplace, and the soldiers were throwing the palliasses out of the windows of the White Lion and piling them up on the marketplace, and then they set fire to them. So it was, they wouldn't have a very good night's sleep after that, I don't suppose. VE Day, I remember that. I listened to Winston Churchill's speech, Frank Jowett, who was advertising in that book of Peter Scott. He rigged some loudspeakers. It was a radio shop. I was going to say television, but there weren't any televisions then. A radio shop where the Crest of the Way chip shop is now. And he rigged loudspeakers up on the end of it so everybody could hear Winston Churchill tell us that it was the war in Europe had finished. So then somebody said that Smiths at Buckle and Hull has got some ice cream for sale, so we went and had the first ice cream we'd had for 4 years, I think, something like that.
Yeah, I can remember Freddie Allsop's shop on the high street just along from where the current co-op is. I can remember Wayne's Chemists, because my auntie worked there for donkey's years, and both old-fashioned shops, and I suppose much the same as the co-op branch would have been so far as butter and sugar being weighed out and everything. And I can still remember Freddie Allsop with his apron right down almost to his ankles. And what we didn't know was that Freddie Allsop was also a dealer in pit ponies, and we only found that out a few weeks ago when we found a postcard, a photo on Ripley Marketplace of FS Allsop, dealer in pit ponies. So I'm now beginning to wonder what was going in the meat that he was sort of selling. But anyway, perhaps we shouldn't pursue that. Hunt's Butchers, of course, or O'Leary's was above the shop, but Hunt's Butchers on the marketplace, where you went for steak and it was, well, how wide do you want it cutting? You know, it wasn't, there was no pre-packed stuff. It was a literal sawdust on the floor and an old-fashioned butcher's shop. And that's the way things were in those days, you know. John Flanagan, obviously, Flanagan and what have you. The policemen, they were characters, obviously, around that time. But, you know, everybody knows Flanagan and Ripley anyway, so...
So what is that a name of? Is it
Yeah, he was a policeman. He was a policeman. He ruled. He ruled Ripley. He was notorious for playing his penny whistle. He could be found in most pubs playing his penny whistle. So, and his son was in, was it Parkin's Patch or something? His son was an actor, and he played a policeman in things. So there's one or two folks from sort of Ripley and what have you that. Well, I don't think there's not many stories that would be repeatable. I think it was in the days when policemen were part of the community and
presumably revered as well.
Yeah. I mean, the respect was there, and I mean, there were tough times. You know, Ripley was a mining town, like Alfred and like Ilkeston, and Friday and Saturday nights were obviously sometimes fraught with danger, but I suppose in those days they were dealt with by summary jurisdiction rather than going to court. I think there was a choice. You know, I can always remember my dad saying the policy was to let them fight, then pick the pieces up afterwards. You know, they'd got no energy to fight policemen if they'd been fighting themselves. But I mean, that was part and parcel for a mining town. It was when I joined, you know, which was 1967. I was at Ilkeston, and it was Friday and Saturday night was always fun night. So there we are. But,